The Think Small podcast presents the Offshore Diaries, where business growth has no borders.
Guys, really excited today. Our first episode of the Offshore Diaries. My name is Paulo Santos, and we'll get some deeper introductions as we go on. Today, we have Gene Behensky and Teo. I'm going to apologize ahead of time.
All good.
Teo Vagno-Ariputra.
There you go.
Right? Cool. We are actually filming live for our first episode. I think future episodes of the Offshore Diaries will be mostly virtual, but whenever we could do live, we'd love to have live videos in person. Let's talk a bit about what we're doing here. So to all of our guests for the first time, I am a Filipino-American, born in Philippines from Malabon, moved here to the United States in New Jersey when I was 3, been back and forth countless times. Very much Americanized, sometimes not American enough for the Americans, not Filipino enough for the Filipinos, is kind of where I fit in this whole thing. But we're really going to talk about, in this podcast, a real kind of framework of the VA industry, whatever that means to individuals, and really talk about the client side, the agency side, and opinions from the VAs and other experts directly. I don't think there's a real platform for this anywhere else to have this kind of open conversation. And I really hope we can kind of create that platform for everybody to have dialogue going forward. Thanks again for joining me, guys. You know, when I approached you two with the concept, you guys both jumped on it. So thank you guys very much for supporting it. Gene, let's start with you. Tell me a bit about yourself and what your company does and, you know, your background.
I started my career as an engineer. I wound up in technical sales. So I spent a lot of time selling technical products all over the world, internationally. I've always been an international person, a lot of travel, living in different countries. About 10 years ago, I started a business coaching practice, and for that practice, I hired my first caller from the Philippines. And I was amazed by that whole process, about their competence, their ability to do work. I hired a second caller. The second time, I was like, well, maybe I ought to get to know the person personally. And I found somebody that we just got along well with, became really good friends. And for about 7 years, we were working on helping my business coaching practice with getting a lot of clients help. You know, first through her, and then we started adding people. And a couple of years ago, we decided to make a real formal business out of it and take it to the next level. So that's I kind of came into this really organically. It wasn't something that I set out to do, and it just ended up growing and taking on a life of its own.
That's awesome. Tell me about yourself, how you ended up in the Philippines.
Yeah, so my journey started in 2008, and this was when I was building websites. And so initially I was like, okay, I need somebody to help me build these websites because orders are coming in. I couldn't fulfill fast enough. So that's when I first hired people from, initially it was China and India and then Philippines. And so I ended up sticking with my Philippines person throughout this entire time. And then we started hiring her brother, her sister. And then we had like a whole office of like 10 people initially, all building websites. And so ever since then, it grew into this e-commerce company that we had. And then from there, I ended up building stealth agents out of that. And so that's where we all started. And now we have agents doing work for all kinds of different companies in multiple different industries.
Very cool, very cool. So just to clarify, I'm Filipino born. Gene, I'm assuming you're not Filipino. Teo, you look Filipino to me, but when I first met you, you clarified that really quickly. You're not Filipino at all.
I'm not.
All right. So, but you do have a connection to the Philippines.
I do. Well, apparently in my DNA, I took one of those like 23andMe's,
right,
and it says I'm 42% Filipino. So I don't know. There you go. But I'm actually Indonesian.
Okay. Well, welcome to the tribe. Well, at 42%, you're closer than a lot of people, so you're good. Awesome. So let's talk about how we got to the point of this podcast and why I wanted to do it and approach you guys initially. But I think the real first thing we need to do is define a VA. So there is no actual definition of what the hell a virtual assistant is. The closest thing we could find on my side is the definition of offshoring from the Philippine Statistics Authority. According to them, offshore/outsourcing is the practice of hiring an external organization to perform some or all of the business functions in a country other than the one where the product or service will be sold or consumed. Okay, so still extremely broad. basically means anything not done on your own home turf, right? I have what I define a VA to be when I think of a VA. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So Gene, when I say, or when somebody says they need a VA, what kind of work, what do you think about that person that's a VA? What do they do?
Well, it could be really a broad range of things. I think that's one of the challenges here. You can work for a solo business owner and do a lot of their basic day-to-day tasks, like manage their email inbox, call their clients, set appointments, do light sales. Could be more structured roles where people are doing bookkeeping, doing research. A lot of the things about the traditional outsourcing, I think it was really India that started it for the British, was when you had structured business, right? Structured processes that you would do it, instead of doing them here, you would do those same things overseas for less money. I think when it comes to having a VA, it's a more personal relationship because you're working either for smaller companies or for entrepreneurs, and that person is doing whatever that person needs to be done, depending on their business.
So I think when people hear virtual assistant, they refer to 4-hour work week, right? And where you have a solo business or you just started a business and you need somebody for like your scheduling, admin tasks, and all those different things, the keywords that you hear all the time. When I hear VA, I think of multiple things. And I think that's where like I think a lot of people would be able to understand a little bit further if they knew what a VA can do for your business. They can essentially, there's people that can run the entire business from sales, marketing, operation, logistics, fulfillment. They can run the entire gambit of like what an organization has for workers. Right. It's essentially it's an employee that is not in the US or in your location. It's an employee that is virtual. That's essentially what I come to that conclusion. So,
Tay, if I remember correctly, you've had up to 200 agents in the Philippines at one point.
At the most, it was about 600.
Oh wow! Right. Okay, wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've had some real deep work within these industries, various clients, types of U.S. clients, all the kind of stuff, and your entire team was all located in the office or remotely in the Philippines.
Well, when we had 600, it was a hybrid of office and remote, but I would say like 80% of them were in the office.
Got it. And Gene, you have about 100.
Right.
And where are you guys located?
We're in Das Marinas, and we have a couple of offices where we basically we have them work out of the office, and that's based upon our experience. We tried the hybrid route. We tried managing people working from home, and that wasn't very easy to do. So bringing them into the office is what we thought would be the best approach to manage and train them.
All right, so I'll tell you my definition of a VA, and it's basically, to me, a VA is anybody that's going to help me do my work better. Right, so you guys are coming from the agency sides of things. I've had my own teams in the past there. For the most part, I hire VAs for myself, more for clients or for my own personal use. I've hired anything from coders, hardcore developers. We've done CRM specialists. We have just data entry people. And then we have regular executive and admin assistants. Also my bookkeeping staff, accountants back there, the whole thing. I mean, over the past 20 years, I think I've hired every type of VA possible. And I do kind of consider all of them VAs. They're all virtual. They all assist me to some extent. But I do think it's still a very broad term overall. A VA is really whatever your person hiring you is going to call you. When I was in the Philippines just a few months ago, I had met a few different VAs that worked for me for the first time in person, which was a very strange encounter, considering you speak almost every day pretty much virtually, and then you finally meet them in person, and the trust is built. There's a different kind of rapport. Just the physical relationship is just so much different than the virtual interactions, right? I know, Gene, you have a lot of background in this as far as some of the stories some of these VAs tell you about, like, their backgrounds and their family lives, and the Philippines, it's poverty, it's hard to get jobs, it's hard to get work, it's just a tough life overall. And I was speaking with some of my team members there, and they pointed me towards this subreddit focused on the VA lifestyle. And I basically got sucked into this like world of VAs ranting. But as they were ranting and talking about these issues they were all having with their clients or just, finding work overall or the rate they're getting paid, I realized that a lot of this was just culturally, they're not used to communicating this to their employers or to each other. And when you have, quite frankly, a middle-aged white American as your client and you're in the Philippines and 20-something years old, you're intimidated to have a real conversation with them. You're culturally taught to not be open about your emotions and feelings. And one of the purposes of this podcast is let's have this open dialogue about it. Knowing you two, you guys are more than open to have conversations with your employees. Most of the VAs, I'm sure you've encountered that in your own teams, are shy. They call everybody ma'am and sir and po and everything else. And they don't want to come off as aggressive or something else. And I think this is going to be a real good platform for us to really, have those dialogues open here. So, like I said, you guys are going to represent this podcast in this episode and in future episodes from the agency side of things and your opinions on it from your firsthand experience. I'm going to really be talking more on the client side. We have another team member in the Philippines as our journalist who will really be talking to the VAs and be their advocate in the conversations as well. Throughout all of these things we're saying here, there's going to be a lot of generalizations, but all from firsthand experience. This is all we could talk about, right? The experiences that we've had. We talked about how broad the term VA is, and obviously you guys have two different types of clientele that you service and different types of VAs that you guys hire. Gene, you talked about being a support staff and being kind of everything else that you want, that the entrepreneur or the client may want done. Right. So what kind of clients do you take on, and what kind of VAs do you kind of look for to match up with your clients?
Well, we get a lot of really small business owners and solopreneurs, basically through my network of coaches. I'm an alternative board franchise owner, so I know a lot of those other franchise owners. I know a lot of other people in that industry, and they have clients and they refer to us. And a lot of times our clients are the smaller ones, and they really need a personal service, and they also need the VAs to be a little bit more proactive. Because, most of us in an American business, we're overloaded, we're busy, we don't have time to really train or really be very methodical with some of these things. So we expect the VAs, and they need the VAs to be that support staff for them. That's kind of what we've been doing until now. And that requires us to do some cultural training and some other training to make sure that the VAs are able to work at that level and be up to speed, to realize that they have to use their personality and be proactive and be willing to communicate.
You brought up something we got to talk about, cultural training, right? So you not being from the Philippines,
right?
Me being from the Philippines and everything else, you and I have different takes, and obviously you grew up here. I know you've traveled a lot, but you're from the United States, right? Can you give some examples of some of these cultural challenges that you kind of have to train in or train out of some of these people that you work with?
Well, first of all, Americans are unique in the world with the way their approach to business and personal relationships. We're not very hierarchical, and we're not very patriarchal. So that's a big change for just any other country where people really know their place. They know where they are in line, especially when you're younger. They might have never had open conversations with anyone before, not even their parents, right? So, you might be the first person that you're going to have an open conversation with. You're going to ask them questions that no one's ever asked them before. And so this is really eye-opening. It was eye-opening for me, especially with a lot of people that come from a background of poverty. A lot of the people we end up hiring are the first person in their family that have ever gone to college, right? So they're kind of seen as like the golden person in their family, right? They're getting a real job and they've gone to college for the first time, and they're coming into the professional workforce. They might not have a culture of that in their own families, right? So they might not have been raised with any of that background. So it's all new to them. So it's not only their place, and when you're looking at an American business owner who is self-assured, who's confident, who's probably twice their age, right? they have an expectation of how people are going to behave in a relationship. And we have to prepare the VAs for that, right? Because they're sometimes surprised, but with how nice they are and how open they are. But at the same time, there's also expectations that they have to understand. And that's where we have to coach and manage them to bring that out.
Yeah, so one of the things we do on our side, whenever we bring on a new VA for a client, is I have my business partner down in Florida, and we train the sir and ma'am out of them.
Absolutely.
You do not talk to executives and say sir or ma'am and immediately put yourself in a subservient, below them culture. And
it has to be peer-to-peer.
Peer-to-peer.
They have to learn, and that's very hard for them because they don't do that in their own culture. Like I almost tell them, when you're doing a phone call, it's equivalent to you as a student running up to the principal of your school and barging in the door and telling that person directly on a first-name basis that they need to do something, right? You have to be prepared for that, right? You have to know that that's the kind of communication you need to learn.
So Teo, 600 people at one time is a hell of a lot of culture and interculture to manage, right? I'm sure you've had some real crazy stories of just like culture shock for yourself and for your team. And how do you deal with issues like that, it's so anti what they've been taught their entire life? How do you work around some of these kinds of issues that have come up in your company? I
like to look at them as like different tiers of hires and different tiers of experience, right? And so the people that the people that were like beginners in the virtual assistant space, it's hard to break out of the sirs and the ma'ams. And it's always been a thing. But when you get to like level B and level C, so there's like A, B, and C, or actually I would say C, B, and A, right? So if you get to level A, which are like the top tier, they've worked with executives. So they're used to it. They know how to talk to them. So the sirs and the ma'ams culturally that's not even a thing anymore. It's like as if you're talking to a USA employee. And then you get to the Bs where you're like transitioning over to A's, you're trying to get them to A. It's still a little bit more difficult as well. So it depends on like the person that you hire. For us, what we've experienced out of hiring probably thousands of people at this point, we've experienced that it all comes down to who you hire. That really matters. And so we've tried to do the whole cultural thing with 600 people, and the 600 people, they were the C's, right? They weren't the A's that we have now. And so the C's were really good at doing tasks, and they were like, okay, I have like 1,000 or 1,000,000 different tasks that we had to do, and that's exactly what we did. We hired 600 people to do these millions of things and do them well and do it like precise. And then when we get to the higher level of strategy in operations, logistics, management, then we had to get the A players, and the culture was already there because they've already had the 10 plus years of experience working with executives. And so you don't really need to teach them like, okay, don't say the sirs and the ma'ams anymore. They already are like, they're in there and talking to somebody as if they've had experience for 10 plus years with them.
Now, for most of your clients, do you allow the VAs to interact directly with those and communicate directly with your clients?
Absolutely. If they can't do that, they're not going to be hired by us.
Now, Gene, do you do that as well, or do you have a separate team that communicates directly with your clients, or is it the VAs working for them directly?
No, they work for them directly, and they also have a manager that helps the relationship. But they're expected to work directly with them.
What's interesting is, so in my side of things, when I hire VAs to support me for my clients, very few times do I actually allow them to interact with my clients. And personally, it's just a trust thing. I don't trust that they're going to represent me to the best of their abilities. Now, there are a few that I've had. I have one now that I 100% trust to interact directly. But for the most part, that has to be really, really earned on my side if I'm going to put you in front of my client directly. Because they're not hiring. When they're hiring me, they're not hiring an agency, they're hiring me. And I happen to be having a team of VAs behind me to do some of the work. But yeah, it would take a lot of trust for me to just put somebody out there and say, hey, welcome to the team. Go talk to this client on my behalf. Oh my God. That would take a little bit more trust from my side. So that's pretty cool stuff. If you're putting VAs right in front of clients and the clients have certain expectations already, you have certain expectations as their employer. Do they look at you versus your client as like Teo is my employer, the client is Teo's client. Do they see or feel that? Do they know that kind of structure on your side? Or is it more just like, I'm just working my daily thing?
Yeah, and that's where you implement the culture into your business, right? Because if and for what we do is we have a very rigorous onboarding process, and so they know that they are a part of Stealth Agents, and there's many things that we do to do that. For example, if your client leaves, we're going to get you another client, and so they know that they're working for us as Stealth Agents, and we're going to take care of them. We're not going to let them get screwed by anybody, and so we make sure that it's implemented inside of our onboarding process that they are a part of Stealth Agents. So they've got the Stealth Agents background when they are introduced to a client. They speak and talk the way we do culturally. There are some things that we have to, I would say, onboard them on, like our softwares and tools that we use, how we communicate with clients, the way meetings are scheduled and the way meetings are handled. So by the time they even get to the actual client, they already know everything and all the steps of what they need to do to accomplish the task for the client on our behalf, and working with this whole cohesive ecosystem client relationship.
Now Gina, you guys also have a different kind of hiring process. So what's the kind of things you guys do when you're doing a new hire? What do you kind of do for them or do with them to make sure that they're the right fit for your team?
Well, we do a lot of assessments, right? We use DISC and the Culture Index that we've invested in, and for us, assessments is really the linchpin. Everyone in our organization, we all talk about the assessments and people's different personality styles and how we match them with clients. And we also have a rigorous hiring process. I just found out, to get 10 agents, we might have to go through 200 resumes. So it's not an easy process to get in the company. But the flip side is that because we're on site, we build a very strong local culture. There is a company culture. We have parties. We do a lot of things together. There's a way to foster this group approach where they feel they're working for Archers. They're working for the company first, and the client is important. Obviously, that's their client. But we also promise them new clients, and also we promise our clients if the VA doesn't work out, we can swap the VA out. People are very serious about taking the role seriously, and it makes a difference, I think.
Well, I think that's huge. So, on my side of things, as a client that would hire VAs directly sometimes or through an agency, I do try to bring them into kind of my fold. Obviously, meeting them in person helps a lot. But how often does that actually really ever happen? What I find interesting, though, is I try to get them into the culture. I try to get them into how I want to talk and how I want to think, or how my clients want to, interact with them and what their main goals are as my clients, I guess, right? And even still, I'm not sure there's always that 100% trust factor from them to me or me to them. And I think a lot of that is manifests, and sometimes they disappear on me. All right, so we're going to go back to this topic real fast because we're talking about culture changes. And this could be one of those conversation pieces that we could really get into. On my side of things as the client, we've hired plenty of people, and as much as I try to embrace them and bring them in, there's always that little bit of distrust. You're 20,000 miles away, 12-hour difference. Do I really know what you're doing every single day working, especially if you're not in an office, you're remote, at home, and when I call you sometimes there's dogs or chickens in the background, or, your kids are running around. So there's always a little bit of distrust of how much are you actually working right now? So I'm going to pull up a message here, which is, one of these things where I trust my VA sometimes, and then I also have this weird what's really going on? So this is an email from a year and a half ago. And it was a VA that I had, and we were 4 weeks into a 8 or 10 week project, and she was handling so much of it, and she was kind of indispensable to the project at the time. And, she emails me one day and says, basically, I have to stop working. My ex just showed up at my door with a gun. We sped off the scene with my son, and I got into a car accident and broke both my legs. I'll have to bow out of the project and won't be able to work for the next 4 or 5 months. Sympathetic me, I'm going to take her word for it. There's no reason not to take her word for it. But I could probably pull up 20, 30 more emails and other text messages and other Google chats and Teams messages of, I gotta go. My father's sick in the province. I have to leave for 4 days. My mom is dying all of a sudden, etc. And then you believe most of it, but then some of these people, Philippine culture loves posting. They love Facebook. They love Instagrams. Then they're posting they're sitting on some beach in Boracay, right? So I trust my VAs as much as I can. That being said, there's also some bit of distrust when you hear these messages nonstop. And obviously, for as long as you guys have been in business, with the amount of people you've interviewed and hired, I mean, this isn't your first rodeo. You've encountered a lot of these stories. So I think let's get into some horror stories, man. So what are the challenges you guys have had in this, with these VAs and why it's kind of this back and forth struggle and push and pull of trying to get some trust out of them?
Yeah, so for me, we used to have a whole bunch of them. And as everyone knows, and that's kind of the biggest struggles as well. So if you're a USA company or a solopreneur, small business, and you're trying to hire your first VA, you're going to get these stories. And here's the reason why. Because 99% of like the VAs are almost like the same, right? They're all the same. Like they go to work and they work for you. They work really hard. But filtering through the process of like those type of stories, and it is unfortunate. I mean, like, it does happen. There's legitimate reasons, and people do have legitimate things. We have things here in the States as well, and break a leg and I need money for surgery, whatever. Like, we have things here in the States as the same thing as out there. But there's also the problem that you have to filter out is the people who tend to fib or flat out lie about it. And so that's kind of what we've noticed, and what we've done for that is we have our managers who are experienced in this. We have HR that goes through this process, validates, sees it, and checks if it's real and if it's legit, and if it's something that they've had history on and they keep doing it, or if it's something that's real, that really happened. And so what we do is we take care of our people. We would send them zero interest cash advance as long as they've been with us for X amount of time. And we also have rules in place as well for those cash advances. So we have policies that are created for this as well. So if an emergency happens, you need $1,000, but you've been with the company for 2 years. We know you're going to pay that back. And so we'll send it to you right away. Within 2 minutes, we'll send it to you. You'll get it if the emergency is legitimate. But if it's someone that we haven't worked with, and it's something that, I need like $1,000 and I've only been with you for like 2 weeks. Well, obviously not. We're not going to do that. And so we have these systems in place for when things happen and they need an emergency. We've got their backs.
Gene, how about you? I'm sure you've had some horror stories about this kind of stuff.
Well, there's lots of them. I mean, we just had one today where a VA was mugged and lost their phone, and the client was going to get a phone for them. The life is tougher over there. It's just more complicated, and they're more family oriented. They depend on each other more. So when things come up in the family, they're going to go and do things for their family that we wouldn't do here, right? So we also have a different place of work. Like a lot of things in the States revolve around work. We put work first before family, and a lot of entrepreneurs do that as well, and they expect the VAs to do that. On our side, we found out through many horror stories of people faking what they were doing and faking timesheets and constantly being late. They're hired on our side, they're hired as full-time employees according to Filipino labor law. They have to come in, punch in. We have guidelines of how many times they can be absent or how many times they can be late. And what we found is that if people want a full-time job, this is I think the key difference is that when people want a full-time job, they will create the place in their life and in their family life for that job. If you're hiring a VA working out of their house, you don't really know what they're doing. They could be taking care of their family at the same time. If they're working nights, the houses are small. They can have their family sleeping on the ground next to them while they're working at night, right? Their attention isn't really number one on the job, right? So you kind of have to find people who have carved out that in their life, that the job is a priority.
So just to clarify this, I agree with you. I think, and I'm going to differentiate what you guys are doing, where you're employing them under an agency, you have the protection and all that stuff that you guys provide, versus what you're talking about are independent VAs who clients are hiring directly, and all the risk basically sits on the client, right?
Oh, yeah.
You have no monitoring for the most part. Even if you install the software, you send them a laptop, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I can't even tell you how many laptops and cell phones I've given away that I'm supposed to give somebody for working for me, and 3 days later, see you later, right? But what you're talking about here is these, and this is such an important topic because the word VA, like I said, is so broad, and we're talking about. Let's be honest. We're talking about the U.S. wants them for cheap labor, right? We're talking about cheap labor that's skilled and qualified, but they're hiring it because they want to pay a lower rate than what they would pay somebody here in the United States, right? Let's just call it what it is. That comes with a lot of risk, and sometimes the risks don't necessarily, the reward doesn't necessarily outweigh the risks in some of these scenarios. But we're talking about these independent VAs. I thoroughly agree with you that it's hard to say what they're actually doing 8, 9, 10 hours a day, right? Even if you are on your laptop, is your 4-year-old jumping on your back while your dog is barking, while you go have to, feed your elderly grandmother and Lola in the other room, or cook for them in between, right? I'm not saying people shouldn't have lives, but you're committing to a job. So I guess what I want to find out, do you think most people go into the VA industry? Let's say I want to be a VA. Do you think they're looking for full-time work, or they're just looking for something to do on the side, or a second and third side hustle? Is that really what these independent VAs are to you guys versus full-time employees?
That's the problem with the term VA, is that either on U.S. side, some of us think of VA as just someone that can handle your schedules and your meetings and all those things, right? But on the Philippine side, also people looking at the term VA, they're looking at it as a side hustle, like remote work. Oh, online jobs, that's easy. I can just apply for an online job and get paid, and magic money will come out of nowhere, right? But the reality here is that those jobs, especially with AI now, are getting harder and harder, and some of them don't even exist anymore. Yeah. So you've got jobs with social media management, right? That used to be a term tossed around for many, many years, and VAs would go in and apply for social media managed jobs. But now social media management is taken care of by AI. Yeah. You don't need anyone to write posts for you or create graphics or anything like that. And so the term is being tossed around very often as a side hustle, or make money and it's just going to be all good, and or get a client with zero experience. And so that's kind of the risk going in, is that if you are trying to hire a VA yourself, you're going to have a lot of things that you have to understand, or a lot of things you're going to go through that you're going to have a bad experience. 5 out of 6 times you're going to have a bad experience, and the one time that you are going to have a good experience, you might find somebody that is experienced as a VA in the past that knows exactly how everything works, versus you going in having to train somebody on how your processes work, and constantly train them oh, here's Microsoft Excel, or here's Google, and here's how you connect these two together. That's the problem, is that most people are not experienced, and so they think that they can just become a VA. So I think from what we've seen is that a lot of people that were in the BPO space, they went in as a call center agent, and they were given the list of tasks, and they were told to say things, and they had scripts and everything else like that. When they go into the VA space and they transition over, it's a lot different. You're not giving a list of tasks, and you're not here's a script that you need to say. When you go into the client space, you got to think for yourself. Clients are I expect you to do this. Can you do it for me? And so most of the time, the VAs are not experienced in doing that.
Right.
And so that's kind of the problem there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I agree. I think the types of VAs we're talking about here, because the word is so broad, so is the pool of VAs, and the skill sets are so just different. I don't know if the clients know that, though, right? From a client side, they say, get me a VA that does this, and they're just supposed to magically appear out of nowhere. But I think that really brings into a deeper point of one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast overall was, let's be honest, there's a lot of garbage out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
There's a lot of garbage out there. And this is going to be kind of a sensitive topic to, I know a lot of people in the Philippines that I know firsthand may not like this conversation, but like a VA, let's say you've been from the BPO space, you became a VA for an agency, right before COVID, and you had some really good success the past 3 years, 4 or 5 years. And then you say, you know what? Screw it. Why am I giving my money, a percentage of my money that I'm making per hour to an agency? What's the point of that? I'm going to start my own agency. Or I'm going to go independent. I'm going to go get my own clients, and I'm going to hire 4 or 5 people under me. And then I'll take the agency cut instead. I could probably name off the top of my head 100 people that have done it, and 99.9% that have failed in the first 3 months of even starting it. Right? One of the things I want to talk to you guys about is just on your side of things and on my side of things, we're running businesses. These are legitimate enterprises, companies that require hiring solutions, technology, human resource solutions, operational expertise, revenue generation, sales, client management. On top of all that, sometimes you got to do the dirty work. Sometimes you're also the guy who also has to go there and water the plants and wash the dishes. This is entrepreneurship, especially what you guys do. You guys bootstrapped your own companies over 5 years, I think 10, 15 years, Teo, you?
About there.
Give or take, right? Yeah. With a ton of money going out of your pocket before the first dollar comes back in. See, this kind of conversation, for the most part, like I said, generalizing based on our own experience, is not taught to the Philippine culture. They think Americans, business owners, hiring them, bottomless, endless money flowing out. And I almost challenge people to go ahead and start your own agency sometimes. You've been a great VA, go for it. You think you can get your own clients, go for it. Let's see how much success you actually have. Because you've been under the protection of an agency that's doing all the marketing, all of the training, all of the dirty paperwork that you don't want to do, interacting with that client, and then you show up at the door and then do the work. Quite frankly, that's kind of the last step in the equation, right? How much work has been done for sometimes weeks, months, sometimes years to get a client onboarded to the point where they're actually paying you. By the way, if they even pay you the next month's or the next week's check, right? And if they don't, you're still on the hook to pay your employees, right? And I think that's a conversation that isn't really told to the VAs. They think that it's just an endless stream of money all the time, and revenue is just always pouring in. You could find a client anytime, anywhere. And with the amount of people that are quote unquote becoming VAs nowadays, I actually think it's ruining the industry. So, I'd love to hear your take on that, because I really have a passion about this conversation of just from becoming a BPO world or call center world or becoming a VA, and then suddenly saying, I suddenly want to start my own thing. It's not a step 1, step 2 thing, right? It's a big leap, right? So can you guys kind of talk on that and tell me some of the challenges or some of the realities of what that really looks like?
Well, first of all, if you're going to start a business in the Philippines, you need somebody over there as a partner, right? That's the first thing you need, someone over there that you trust, someone that knows all the legal framework, that can sign contracts, to rent buildings and to do a lot of the things that you need to do. So you already have to have an established relationship with someone that you trust. In my case, I worked with her already 7 years, my partner, Virginia, and I knew her, and we talked about this over a long period of time. Plus, it is a substantial investment. One of the things about cultures that's very interesting is that a lot of people don't plan. When you start a business, you have to enact a long range plan. You have all the steps that you need to do to make that plan happen, and also you need to fund that plan with money that you need in advance, because there's going to be, like you said, a long ramp up time. You're going to be investing money, and it's going to be quite a while. But by the time you get money back, that can start paying off the loans and paying off yourself. Sometimes it takes 2-3 years for that to happen. right? And that's what people don't understand going in. They also don't understand the profit margin that you need to make in order to be profitable. I mean, I do this on my coaching side. Most people don't charge enough. And when you don't charge enough, you don't have enough profit to give good customer service. You don't have enough money left over to help customers when they need help. If you're cutting it to the bone and you run out of money, no one is helped, right? So that's why you can't offer a low-price service either. And so we actually had, in our case, when we started, like 3-4 months in, we actually had 6 agents that got together and had a secret plan to steal clients and start an own agency. And we caught them by somebody intercepted a Facebook feed. I don't know the whole story about it. They all had to end up being let go, which was really traumatic at the beginning. But people have these ideas, and they have no idea what they're going to get involved, the kind of complicated issues that they have to face, and how much money they have to invest. And it's just amazing. But people think they can do it, but you can't do it without a plan.
And usually in the Philippines, especially if you're coming from an impoverished background, most Filipinos coming from those kinds of backgrounds don't think long-term plans. They think about how to feed their families tonight or tomorrow, right? So, if you're thinking of just starting your own VA agency and getting your own clients as quick money, I mean, it's pretty much the complete opposite, right? I think most of us have had to pocket so much expenses on our own, and including the, when business is good, it's great, and then when business dips, guess what? We're back to pocketing the expenses and losses again. And I don't think that's something that Filipinos necessarily think about or are ever taught about the nuances of just how business works.
Well, I think if you come from poverty, right, you're not ever trained to plan. You don't have anyone in your family that has ever taught you how to plan because they never planned. Right. Everything was day to day. And so to enact a long-term plan is it's a big life change, right? Because you have to be willing, to give up things today for tomorrow. You have to be able to sacrifice pleasure and whatever you want today for likely gains tomorrow, which might not happen, right? And that's hard to do.
That's a topic, that comes often. When you come in, you work for a company, and you end up deciding to do your own thing. And once you've learned everything, the issue there is that there's so many factors and variables that people don't really know. And when they get to the trenches and they're like, okay, I've got my VA company. Now what? How do I get clients? How do I do marketing? How do I do fulfillment? How do I do profit margins? They don't know those things and they're not experienced, and so they end up in failure, right? And so we've seen this happen many times, and I've seen this happen even in our organization, and we have the same, it's like the same algorithms happen. They always come back. They're like, oh, can I have my job back or whatever? And I'm like, you know what? I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
That's crazy.
That's a tough one.
You and then we've actually had people where they've gone out and contacted our clients, and our clients are like, well, who's this? And it was like our previous people that used to work for you, and they're now trying to poach you. And we've also had the other way around where clients poach our clients, but we've got all those contracts in place, and it's all like we know what to do, but before we didn't, and so that was kind of the big issue there. I mean, I'll tell you this, like some of the sacrifices that I've had to make to build this company, most people would not even dare do. I mean, imagine selling your Porsche to pay payroll.
Yeah.
That's what I had to do.
Yeah.
Twice.
And payroll comes first, right? You got to pay payroll before everything else.
I did that twice. Right. And during the times that we had hard times in our company and we were trying to build it, and we spent so much more on marketing to get clients, and then there was time where we were it was tough and we had to figure things out. So as we grew, our company right now, we started back in 2014, but we actually ended up servicing the public in 2019. And so as we were growing, we had to learn many things. And so from 2019 up until now, I had to personally invest about $1.3 million of my own money in cash to build this thing, to learn the things that we need to do to improve our product, improve our marketing, improve the deliverables. Because in the beginning, we used to have two products. We used to have a virtual assistant product, and an executive assistant product, which is a higher end product. We know, and then we also had sub products. We had part-time and full-time. We only offer one product now, full-time executive assistants.
Right.
We don't take anyone under that. And the reason is because we've learned throughout the entire process, we only want to service the best clients, and we only want to give them the best agents. And so it took us so much money to do that, to figure that out, to actually just get there to that point. And not on top of that, but like we had to learn how the best softwares to use. We had to learn how to get the best agents. We had to learn how to get the best productivity out of these agents. And so now we have, at this point, we're scaling, but we don't have any issues with giving our clients bad agents or like, you know, honestly, we actually, what's kind of crazy is we have them go through this whole onboarding process, but we don't do any assessment tests.
Wow.
And here's the reason why. Because people can fake assessment tests. And we've even had our own tests, and you can look it up on YouTube, Stealth Agents Test. And there's this lady who's giving all the answers, A, B, C, D, E. And it was like, wow, like my COO saw that and we were like, wow. So our hiring process didn't work. And so we had to change it all around. And so we stopped doing assessment tests, and we ended up looking for, we have our own checklist now. We have our own assessments. And so we started doing that, and we started finding out that by finding the core, the inner person, who that person is more important than any test that we can give them. Interesting.
Well, it's interesting, especially when you talk about, you know, how much money you're pocketing and payroll comes first. I mean, there's so many things from that I don't think the VA, the agent, people trying to start their own agencies really understand. Like, if the peso to dollar ratio shifts 5-6 pesos in one direction, that's basically like us increasing the amount of money that we owe all of a sudden, because the client isn't changing their payments to us. We just have to pay more out of pocket, right? And little things like that and nuances of how that's going to work is not embedded in Philippine culture, right? And you talk about, you know, like, and you're right. Sometimes you have to get rid of your car to make payroll because, yeah, you have a car, but payroll to these people are living week to week. Most of these VAs don't have a heavy bank account. You know, their Gcash is pretty much, you know, refilled every single week as they need it for their regular, you know, life. We know, you guys know for a fact that you have to make payroll. Like that's like life altering if they don't get paid 1 week, right?
Exactly. We've never missed a payroll since 2008, and but that's the problem. Like,
but on the other side of things, I think it's really important for them to understand, as a VA, if you decide to quit one day, we still have to provide the service to our clients, right? We have to bear the cost of bringing onboarding another person, maybe two, the time of training, and then telling our client what we then have to do and potentially losing that client because the work didn't get done on a timely manner. That's all very possible stuff. And that's the kind of thing I don't think VAs see on the business side of things that entrepreneurs and other business owners like yourselves have to take on all the time. Like there's a heavy risk involved in trying to open these businesses, including a large monetary loss that you hope you could turn around and eventually get back. And successful stories like yourselves, thank God, you were able to, but most companies and agencies that try to open up there don't. And one of the reasons I think they're failing is because there's, as much as there's garbage in the VA industry from the amount of people coming into the industry saying they're VAs, you have, I'm going to put this in quotes again, agencies who are selling their services on social media for medical transcriptioners, legal VAs, admin VAs, at $2 an hour. Like, you're literally ruining what the potential thing is, but it's all garbage. So I know you guys have actually hired some of these agencies in the past, right? From a labor side of things, as a Filipino, thinking about, my people getting paid $2